She had just touched down from another red-eye flight. Tired but still glowing, Kayla Hodgson wheeled her suitcase through the terminal with that same poise she was known for: polished uniform, neat bun, warm smile. She had done this routine countless times before. But this time, she wouldn't make it back home. In the hours that followed her arrival, text messages went unanswered. Her phone went silent. And when her best friend called again and again with no reply, something felt off. Kayla wasn't the kind of woman to vanish, not without saying something. Not without a word. Especially not in a city where she had friends, family, and plans for the weekend. Somewhere across town, another phone lit up. A notification popped up on a locked screen. A message filled with rage. Another woman, reading words she was never supposed to see. A threat disguised as a warning. A name mentioned once, just once, and that was all it took to ignite something that couldn't be undone. This wasn't a love triangle filled with games and flirting. It wasn't gossip. It wasn't some online feud. No. This was personal. A slow burn of betrayal that finally snapped. One woman had questions. The other had no idea she was being hunted. The man caught in the middle? Silent. Hiding behind lies. Letting two women live in two different realities, until one of them was removed, permanently. Kayla Hodgson never saw her killer coming. She thought she was in love. She thought what she had was real. But while she was laying out her clothes for the next day, someone else was getting dressed too. Black hoodie. Gloves. No words. No hesitation. Just a plan, and the kind of rage that doesn't shout, it moves quietly, until it strikes. By the time neighbors heard the scream, it was already too late. This wasn't a random act. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It wasn't a case of mistaken identity. It was deliberate. It was targeted. And when the police arrived, the scene they found was chilling. Blood on the floor. A lifeless body. No forced entry. No sign of a struggle. Just silence. And then came the question, why didn't she go after the boyfriend? Why her? Why Kayla? The answer would unravel a web of jealousy so deep, it stunned even the detectives assigned to the case. And when it was time to testify, the woman responsible didn't flinch. She stood tall, looked the judge in the eye, and said words no one was prepared to hear. This is the story of Kayla Hodgson. A woman who walked into a situation she didn't create. A life cut short by someone she barely even knew. And a crime so cold, the courtroom struggled to process what had really happened. You think you know jealousy? You haven't heard anything yet. Kayla Hodgson was 27 years old. A flight attendant for a major airline. Independent. Well-spoken. Loved by almost everyone who met her. She had a way of lighting up a room without trying. The kind of woman who remembered birthdays, sent check-in texts just because, and always made time for the people she cared about, even after a long flight with aching feet and zero sleep. She had grown up in the suburbs of Virginia, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to give her daughter a life filled with opportunity. Kayla didn't come from wealth. But what she lacked in money, she made up for in determination. In high school, she was the girl who joined every club, helped classmates with homework, and still found time to volunteer at the local shelter on weekends. By the time she turned 22, she'd already traveled to more places than most people would see in a lifetime. It wasn't just a job to her, it was a calling. She loved being in the sky, meeting strangers, seeing new cities. She loved the sense of freedom. Her friends described her as grounded. Real. The kind of woman who could laugh over takeout one night and talk about long-term goals the next. And when it came to love, Kayla didn't play games. She wasn't into the casual hookup scene. She wanted something real. Something honest. That's what she thought she had found, with him. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. But there was something about him that made Kayla feel safe. He listened. He checked in. He made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in a while. She met him through a mutual friend during a layover in Atlanta. A few conversations turned into daily calls. A visit turned into weekends together. Then, before long, it felt like they were building something. But there was one thing Kayla didn't know. He wasn't hers, not entirely. Because somewhere else in that same city, Sakiyna Thompson was living in her own version of a relationship with him. And unlike Kayla, Sakiyna had history. Deep history. Years of on again, off again. Secrets. Fights. Promises. The kind of relationship that doesn't end cleanly, even when it should. To the outside world, they looked done. But behind closed doors, things weren't as simple. And even though he had started seeing Kayla, he had never told Sakiyna it was truly over. For weeks, maybe months, the two relationships ran parallel. Kayla lived in the light. Sharing photos. Posting occasional captions. Innocent, sweet. But Sakiyna lived in the shadows of suspicion. She wasn't the kind of woman to stay quiet when she felt something was off. She noticed changes, new cologne, unreturned calls, shorter visits. And then, she found proof. A single photo. Kayla. Smiling. Standing next to him. It wasn't graphic. It wasn't inappropriate. But it was enough. From that moment on, something shifted in Sakiyna. Her friends said she became distant. Agitated. Obsessed. She started going through his phone. Following his movements. Screenshotting messages. Some say she even created fake accounts to watch Kayla's page. Every post. Every like. Every subtle clue that this new woman was becoming something more than a fling. But here's where things get complicated. Sakiyna didn't confront him. She didn't leave him. She didn't warn Kayla. She waited. And while Kayla continued to build her life, preparing for another international trip, talking to her sister about the possibility of bringing her new boyfriend home for Thanksgiving, Sakiyna was quietly watching. Observing. Thinking. And plotting. Kayla had no idea she was being watched. No reason to suspect that someone had memorized her schedule, her flight roster, even the complex where she sometimes stayed when she had short layovers. She didn't know someone had followed her car once. Or that her Instagram stories were being analyzed like clues in a case. The boyfriend, he said nothing. Played both sides. Lied when it was convenient. Made promises to Kayla, told Sakiyna what she needed to hear. He never expected the two women to cross paths. And if they did, he believed it would blow over. That somehow, it would all stay quiet. But things don't stay quiet when feelings are involved. When pride is bruised. When someone feels replaced. By the time Kayla began to piece together inconsistencies, canceled dates, weird silences, vague answers, it was already too late. She had sent a few texts to a friend, saying she felt like something wasn't adding up. She even joked about it. If he's playing me, I'll walk away. I'm too grown for the drama. She never expected drama would come knocking at her door. And Sakiyna? She had stopped joking weeks ago. By the time she made up her mind, there was nothing playful about her intentions. She knew when Kayla would be back in town. She knew which shift she was working. She had seen it posted on social media. She also knew that if Kayla disappeared, it wouldn't make headlines right away. She was a traveler. A woman always on the move. Missing a few calls? People might not notice. That was her window. And in her mind, she wasn't going after a stranger. She was going after the woman who had taken what was hers. That was the mindset. That was the mistake. And that was the beginning of the end. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of silence. Not the kind that lingers harmlessly between texts or missed calls, but a thick, unsettling quiet that hung in the air like smoke. Kayla's closest friend, Jasmine, was the first to notice. They spoke almost daily, always checking in after flights. But on this particular night, the line stayed dead. At first, Jasmine chalked it up to exhaustion. Maybe Kayla was sleeping off a long haul. Maybe her phone had died. It wasn't uncommon. But as the hours stretched into the next morning, that quiet began to feel heavy. By noon, she still hadn't heard from her. No replies. No social media activity. No location check-ins. That's when Jasmine's gut started whispering something she didn't want to hear. Meanwhile, over on the east side of town, a neighbor on the second floor of the complex where Kayla sometimes stayed mentioned seeing someone unfamiliar the night before. A woman. Hood pulled low. Standing by the entrance, looking at her phone, pacing slowly. She hadn't said anything. Just stood there. Watching. It wasn't just Jasmine who felt the unease. Kayla's sister, Lauren, had also called her twice that day. No answer. That was rare. They weren't just siblings, they were best friends. Kayla always answered, even if it was just to say, "Let me call you back." When she didn't return those calls, Lauren messaged her boyfriend. He claimed he hadn't seen her that day either. Said he was giving her space. That struck her as odd. Space from what? They had just spent time together the week before. They weren't fighting. At least, not that anyone knew of. Still, no one panicked, yet. But the clues began to form a pattern. That afternoon, Kayla's car was spotted. Still parked exactly where it had been the night before. No movement. No trips. And most unsettling of all, her flight roster showed she hadn't checked in for her scheduled shift. That had never happened. Ever. Kayla didn't just skip work. She was dependable. Punctual. If she wasn't showing up, something was wrong. By the second day, Jasmine drove to the apartment herself. She knocked. No answer. She called out. Nothing. The door was locked. The blinds were still drawn. The lights inside dim. From the outside, everything looked untouched. That's when the dread turned to fear. Meanwhile, Sakiyna wasn't answering her phone either. Friends who had grown used to her random mood swings noticed something was different. She wasn't posting on social media. Her usual cryptic captions, quotes about loyalty, trust, and betrayal, had stopped. She hadn't been seen out. Not at her usual spots. Not even at work. She was, for all intents and purposes, gone underground. But someone had seen her. A man working at a nearby gas station remembered a woman matching her description. Said she came in around 3 a.m. a few nights ago. Hoodie pulled low. Gloves. She bought a pack of gum and prepaid for $10 of gas. Paid in cash. She didn't speak. She didn't make eye contact. She looked tense. Focused. Like she was somewhere else entirely. The security footage confirmed it was her. Investigators would later learn that same night, Kayla's phone stopped transmitting location data just after 3:17 a.m. Before that, it had pinged from inside her apartment. After that, it was never turned on again. The rising panic among Kayla's friends and family turned into full-scale urgency. A missing persons report was filed. Police arrived at her unit. They forced entry. Inside, nothing looked wrong at first glance. The place was clean. Nothing overturned. No signs of forced entry. But it was too quiet. No music playing. No flicker of the TV. Kayla's work bag was still by the door. Her phone charger still plugged in. And in the corner of the bedroom, on the nightstand, sat her diary, open to a page dated 2 days before. A simple entry. I don't know what's going on with him. Part of me feels like he's lying. But I don't want to believe it. I really like him. I just want peace. That entry would become a crucial piece of the puzzle. Because within 24 hours of that diary being collected by police, the man she had been seeing was brought in for questioning. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't seem surprised. He just sat there. Hands folded. Eyes low. And when detectives asked him when he had last seen Kayla, he hesitated. Gave a vague answer. Then said, "I don't know, maybe 3 days ago?" That didn't line up. Phone records showed he had texted her the night before. Called her twice. Then suddenly, no more contact. Just silence. When asked about other women, he mentioned Sakiyna. He told the officers they had dated on and off. He claimed they hadn't spoken in weeks. But his phone told a different story. Messages exchanged late at night. Missed calls. And one voice memo, never sent, found in the deleted folder. He had recorded it, then deleted it before it was delivered. The audio clip was scratchy but clear. "You need to stop showing up like this. She doesn't know about you. You can't keep doing this. I told you I'm trying to handle it." The timestamp? Less than a week before Kayla vanished. That memo changed everything. The detectives got a warrant for Sakiyna's phone records, and what they uncovered painted a picture far more calculated than anyone had imagined. Her location data placed her near Kayla's apartment the night she disappeared. 3 separate times. Early evening. Just before midnight. Then, again after 3 a.m. The tension reached a boiling point. Friends were demanding answers. Family members were showing up to press conferences in tears, pleading with the public to come forward. The boyfriend, now caught between 2 timelines, began backtracking. His story shifted. Details blurred. And then came the break. A neighbor. Quiet. Lived down the hall. Said she didn't want to get involved at first, but something about that night haunted her. She remembered hearing footsteps. A knock. Then a voice. A woman's voice. Low. Calm. Controlled. She said she heard, "I just want to talk." Then, silence. Minutes later, she thought she heard a thud. Not loud. Just, final. She thought maybe something had fallen. She never imagined it was someone's last breath. That single statement was enough to secure a warrant for Sakiyna's arrest. But when they went looking for her, she was gone. Phone off. No address change. No trace. She had disappeared, just like Kayla. But what Sakiyna didn't know, is that she had left something behind. And when investigators found it, the story would take a turn no one expected. The first thing they noticed was the smell. 3 days after Kayla was last seen, a maintenance worker entered her unit. The hallway had begun to fill with a strange, sour scent. Faint, but growing stronger by the hour. The kind of odor that made your throat tighten without explanation. He knocked first, once, twice, then unlocked the door with his master key. What he saw inside would change everything. Kayla's apartment looked undisturbed at first glance. But the air was heavy. The temperature unusually cool, as if the AC had been lowered intentionally. In the bedroom, just past the open suitcase she'd never finished unpacking, was her body. Partially concealed. Face turned to the side. A pillow over her head. Blood soaked into the edge of the mattress. No signs of a struggle. No bruises on her hands. No broken lamps. No shattered glass. Only a single, shallow wound to the back of the skull. A puncture. Clean. Precise. The killer had moved with intention. Quick. Quiet. She had likely been asleep when it happened. Investigators arrived within minutes. The unit was sealed. Forensics swept the scene, combing through every inch. A small smear of blood on the doorknob. A faint footprint on the hallway tile, likely stepped in while leaving. Size 7.5. Women's. There was no forced entry. No missing valuables. Her purse was still there, untouched. Jewelry left in plain sight. Nothing about this was a robbery. This was personal. And then, inside the bathroom trash can, beneath tissues and product wrappers, they found the first clue that connected everything. A black latex glove. Inside that glove, DNA, and the match, Sakiyna Thompson. It wasn't circumstantial anymore. It wasn't hearsay. It wasn't jealousy or suspicion or motive. It was evidence. Cold. Solid. Traced directly to the woman who had been circling Kayla's life like a predator waiting for the right moment. But finding her wouldn't be simple. She had vanished. No social media updates. No bank card activity. Her phone last pinged 2 towns over before disappearing completely. It was like she'd rehearsed her escape. The man they both dated, he was now in the hot seat. Interrogated for hours. Every version of his story dissected. The detectives no longer entertained his silence. They laid it all out: timeline, messages, GPS logs. At first, he denied knowing anything. Said he hadn't seen her in weeks. But when they played him the voice memo he'd deleted, his hands started shaking. Then he broke. He confessed that Sakiyna had found out about Kayla long before he admitted it. He said she'd confronted him weeks earlier, showed up at his place screaming. He swore he didn't think she'd do anything. Swore she was just emotional. That she said wild things, but never acted on them. That she wasn't dangerous. But he had lied to both women. Led 2 lives. Watched the fuse burn down without warning either one of them about how close it was to exploding. Meanwhile, investigators expanded the search. Pulled security footage from nearby gas stations, bus stops, ATMs. It took 6 days to find her. She was spotted in South Carolina, over 200 miles away, sitting alone outside a motel laundromat. When officers approached, she didn't run. She didn't ask why she was being arrested. She just stood up, placed her hands behind her back, and said, "I figured you'd find me eventually." During questioning, her tone never changed. Steady. Monotone. No tears. No visible remorse. She denied everything at first, said she just wanted to talk to Kayla. Said she only stopped by to clear the air. But when shown the glove, the DNA, the timeline, and the security footage of her near the apartment, she fell silent. Then, slowly, she said, "I didn't mean to do it like that." That sentence hung in the room like smoke. The detectives didn't flinch. They waited. And then she continued. "She didn't even fight. She just looked at me. Like she didn't understand why I was there. Like I didn't belong." She paused. Looked down. "I just wanted to scare her. That's all I came for. I don't know what happened. I don't remember doing it." The statement wasn't a confession. Not legally. But it was enough to press charges. Murder in the 1st degree. Her trial began 9 months later. By then, the media had taken hold of the case. Headlines screamed about jealousy. Social media exploded with debates. Some blamed the boyfriend for his lies. Others dissected Sakiyna's mental state. There were those who said she had snapped. Others said she'd planned it all along. But in court, the evidence told the only story that mattered. The prosecution brought everything. The timeline. The texts. The DNA. The diary entry Kayla had written just days before her death. They played the voice memo. Showed the glove. The footprint. The GPS data. The autopsy report. The jury watched in silence. Kayla's mother sat in the front row. Hands trembling. Eyes red. She never looked away. And when Sakiyna took the stand, her testimony only deepened the ache in the room. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She simply said, "I was tired of being invisible." That one sentence said more than all the others combined. When the verdict was read, the room froze. Guilty. On all counts. She was sentenced to life in prison. No possibility of parole. Kayla's F.A. Because the truth remained brutal. Kayla never stood a chance. She wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time. She didn't provoke. She didn't threaten. She was simply there. Living. Loving. Trusting someone who never deserved it. And for that, she paid the ultimate price. In the weeks following the trial, the silence that had once haunted Kayla's friends and family turned into something else entirely, an aching void, the kind that doesn't just fade. Her funeral was held on a gray, wind-chilled morning in Virginia. Hundreds came. Classmates from high school. Co-workers from her airline. Even passengers she'd flown with regularly showed up to honor her. The service was soft-spoken, filled with photos of her laughing, living, loving, captured in fragments now frozen in time. Her mother never made it through her speech. Her voice cracked halfway through a story about Kayla's first solo trip to New York, where she got lost and still managed to find a hole-in-the-wall diner she raved about for months. Her sister, Lauren, stepped in and finished it for her, her hands shaking as she read the closing words. Kayla never feared the sky. She only feared wasting time. But time, for Kayla, was stolen. The aftermath stretched far beyond the trial and the sentence. In the quiet corners of everyday life, the ripple effects never stopped. Her apartment lease was terminated, but her landlord admitted he couldn't bring himself to rent it out again. He said he still sometimes walked by and expected to hear her key turning in the door. At her airline, a small plaque was placed on the wall near the crew lounge, in memory of Kayla Hodgson, who brought kindness at 30,000 feet. Her former supervisor said morale dipped for weeks. Colleagues who had laughed with her, shared overnights and long-haul layovers, now found themselves pausing every time her name popped up in memories or old group chats. Jasmine, her best friend, couldn't step foot inside an airport for months. She quit flying entirely. Said it wasn't worth it anymore. We gave the world our time, she said. And in return, it took Kayla. The man both women had been involved with disappeared from public view. His name, though never officially charged with any crime, became synonymous with betrayal in the minds of many. He lost his job, moved out of state, and never spoke publicly about the case again. But his silence didn't shield him. Online forums tore him apart. Some blamed him for playing both women. Others said he was a coward who watched two lives burn and walked away untouched. What the public didn't know, what no court record detailed, was that he did try to contact Kayla's family once. He sent a handwritten letter to her mother. 3 pages long. Apologizing. Saying he never imagined it would go that far. That he never thought she'd actually do it. That he was just trying to protect everyone. The letter was returned. Unopened. There were no second chances. Not anymore. As for Sakiyna Thompson, life behind bars offered none of the vindication she once imagined. In the beginning, she was quiet. Cold. Unresponsive. Other inmates described her as emotionless. Flat. She didn't speak unless spoken to. She didn't argue. She just existed. But over time, something began to shift. A prison counselor later said that during one session, Sakiyna asked a question he wasn't prepared for. Do you think God keeps a place for people who never meant to go that far? He didn't answer. He just wrote it down. She never spoke about Kayla again. Meanwhile, Kayla's family turned their pain into action. They launched a nonprofit in her name, the Hodgson Foundation. A group dedicated to helping young women navigate relationships, recognize the warning signs of emotional manipulation, and protect themselves from obsession disguised as love. The foundation held monthly workshops. They partnered with domestic violence shelters. They even created a scholarship fund for girls interested in aviation. 1 year after her death, they held a memorial at the local airstrip where Kayla had taken her first flight as a child. A white balloon release. Each one carried a name of someone lost to intimate partner violence. When they floated upward, the crowd stood in silence, heads tilted back, some with tears, some with smiles, all with stories of their own. But there were wounds that even time couldn't stitch. Lauren still refused to change her contact list. Kayla's number remained. She said she couldn't delete it. Couldn't look at her phone and pretend her sister never existed. Sometimes, when the silence got too loud, she'd call that number. Just to hear the voicemail. Just to remember the sound of her voice saying, "Hey, it's Kayla. Leave something sweet." And Jasmine? She kept the last selfie they took, standing outside a breakfast spot in Atlanta, both of them laughing mid-bite, set as her lock screen. She said it helped her remember what love looked like before it turned into war. Reporters tried to revive the story months later, around the anniversary. But the family declined interviews. They said the only story they wanted the world to remember was Kayla's life, not her death. And still, whispers lingered. Why didn't anyone warn her? Why didn't he say something? Why didn't Sakiyna walk away? Questions with no answers. Only one truth remained: a young woman with a heart full of love was taken by someone who thought she had the right to decide who deserved to live. In the end, it wasn't just about jealousy, or lies, or rage. It was about a choice. A choice that ended one life and ruined two more. And for those left behind, it was a pain that would echo long after the courtroom lights went dark. If this story left you speechless, you're not alone. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think justice was truly served? Could this tragedy have been prevented if someone had spoken up earlier? And what responsibility do we place on the people who